guys, and welcome to another Forgotten Friday here on Wandering Wild. And today, first off, the animals are going crazy. Between Ashley's cat, my cat, and the dog, they won't shut up. So you're probably going to hear some meowing, some playing with lights or toys, and some making noise in the crate. Just ignore that. Maybe I'll put some like background music in. I don't know. We'll see. But they're loud, so I'm sorry. Now, usually on Forgotten Fridays, I talk to you about an animal that has been forgotten, maybe gone extinct or close to, and we talk about why that is and how we can avoid it. Today, though, I decided to do another little video kind of type because a lot of times when I'm telling you about some of our far gone animals, I tell you about a period in time, like the Pleistocene or the Mesozoic era, and there's a really good chance that you don't know what that is. Today, the video for Forgotten Friday is actually on the geologic time scale. And so the reason I'm going to do this is I'm going to teach you what the time scale is and how it works so that when you hear me reference those time periods, you can kind of understand what I'm talking about. And so it gives you a reference as to how close to a dinosaur was this? Is this around before dinosaurs, after dinosaurs? I mean, we all use dinosaurs as our reference. I know we do, so that's why I'm saying that. But that's what this video is going to be, so I hope you like it, and let's get started. The geological timescale, or GTS, is a system that uses geological strata in time to give us a reference point. And paleontologists, archaeologists, and geologists all use this to give them kind of a scale of time. Okay, let's stop here for a minute and just touch on something that might come up due to this video. First off, this video is not a comment on evolution or creation or any of the above. It is simply a time scale used in science to allow you to reference when things happened. Okay, so that's all this is. So that's all this is talking about. Okay? Back to the video. Alright, so basically scientists of all types use this time scale, and so that's why it comes up a lot when we're talking about extinct animals or animals that maybe we only have fossilized forms of, because then we can give a reference point. So that's what I'm going to tell you about the GTS on this video here today. Now, first we take time and we split it into big sections, and these big sections are called eons, and there are 4 of these. Next, we take each eon and we split it into smaller sections called eras. There are about 10 eras. Next, every era is split into periods, and there are about 22 periods total. Now then, you take periods and you split those into epochs. But we're not going to focus on epochs here because that's getting way too specific. The main thing you really want to know are periods and eras within your eons. And now I'm going to break those down for you. You're going to have a nice little chart right here so you can follow along. And we're going to talk about what is important about all of those, okay?
Can you show them the troublemaker?
This is Bingley. I call him Pharaoh. This is Ashley's cat, and he won't shut up. He won't shut up. Can y'all hear him purring? Yes. Good boy. Now shut up. Now, let's start with eons. There's 4 eons. The first 3 are usually combined into what's called the Precambrian time. This is because the only things around were basically single-celled organisms, and we really don't care much about those. Okay, so 3 long periods of time where there was really nothing happening. Okay, now there are 3 eons that are in that Precambrian time period. Number 1, Hadean. Number 2, Archean. Number 3, Proterozoic. Now those we're never going to talk about because I don't care about one-celled organisms. Now, one we're going to talk about the most, and the one we know the most about, is the important one. And we're technically still in this eon. And this eon is called the Phanerozoic eon. That's all you're ever going to hear me talk about, and if I go back on my word, I apologize, but it's not going to happen. Because I don't really care about amoebas, to be honest.
They're kind of boring.
I mean, they really, I wouldn't say boring, but tiny. Definitely tiny.
Wow.
Now, within this eon, you can hear the squeaky toy, can't you? Now, within this eon, there are 3 eras, and you've probably heard of these. It's the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic. And now we're going to talk about the periods that make up each of these. Now, what separates these eras is mass extinction events, okay? So the breaking point between the Paleozoic and the Mesozoic period was the Permian extinction. And the breaking point between the Mesozoic and the Cenozoic was the extinction of the dinosaurs. So we'll get into this a little bit more when we talk about periods, but that's how eras are actually separated by extinction events. Now, let's talk about the Paleozoic. The Paleozoic is split into 6 periods. The first one of these is called the Cambrian period. And this is when you first started to basically get fish and chordates, so things with a spinal cord. The next period was the Ordovician period. And basically during this period, we just had a mass diversification of different families, so a lot of different fish. The third period in the Paleozoic was the Silurian period. And this is important because this is when we had our first vascularized land plants. So this is going to allow some of those animals to move to land because now there are plants there. Our fourth period is the Devonian period. And this is when you saw your first amphibians and jawed fishes. So the next 2 parts of time, they're kind of both periods, but they're usually combined into one, and this is called the Carboniferous period because carbon became really important and readily available. So this is the Mississippian and the Pennsylvanian periods, which more likely are going to be called the Carboniferous period. Now during these, like in the Mississippian, you had ferns that had seeds. And then during the Pennsylvanian period, you had your first reptiles and scaled trees. Now, scaled trees is going to be like your palm trees. Now, the last period of this time is called the Permian period. And this is when you had your diversification of reptiles and when you had your first mass extinction, the Permian extinction. It's also called the Great Dying. This is the largest extinction event that has ever happened in the history of the world. Over 96% of marine life, 70% of terrestrial life, and 56% of insect life went extinct. This is the only mass extinction that includes insects. And so now you've entered the Mesozoic era, which had 3 periods, which I know you've heard of. The first of these was the Triassic period, where you saw your first mammals and your first dinosaurs. The second period was the Jurassic period, and this is when you saw your first birds and dinosaurs began to diversify. Then your third period is the Cretaceous period. Now, the Cretaceous period saw your first flowering plants, your first primates, and then finally the extinction of the dinosaurs. Now, we don't know for sure what caused either of these 2 extinctions, both Permian and the one in the Cretaceous period. Could have been a meteor, could have been volcanic activity. We really don't know. But we do know we lost the dinosaurs at this point in history. And this ushered in the final era, our current era, the Cenozoic era. And so far, we have 2 periods. First, we have the Tertiary period, and this is when, because of the loss of the dinosaurs, mammals began to diversify and fill all those empty spaces. Okay, so then the second period of this era was called the Quaternary period, and that's what we're in now, and that's basically where humans evolved. That's the big mile marker for that period. Now, this era, the Cenozoic, is split into epochs. And that's where epochs become important because we have a lot more information about this time era, and so we can split it up and we can actually know what happens in each of those. So just for this era, I'm going to touch on some of the epochs. Now, starting in that Tertiary period, the first epoch we had was the Pliocene. During this time, you had new mammals, that diversification that we talked about. Then in the second epoch, the Eocene, we had a lot of pygmy animals as well as diatoms. Then in the third epoch, called the Oligocene, we had more mammal progression. Also, you had the formation of the Alps and the Himalayas, which is a pretty big deal. Next, our fourth epoch of the Tertiary period was the Miocene. During this time period, you started to get grazing animals and a lot of volcanic activity. Then in the final and fifth epoch of the Tertiary period, called the Pliocene, your humans appear. Or your hominids. They weren't humans. You know, differences. You also got your Appalachians and your Sierra Mountains were re-elevated. So that means they're no longer underwater. That's a whole nother video. Now we're in the Quaternary period. And that started with a major event. And that's called Pleistocene epoch. And the way you're going to remember the Pleistocene is it was our ice age. So, you know, Manny and the saber-toothed tiger and Sid the Sloth. Yeah, Pleistocene. And, you know, your humans get a little bit more advanced. You know, they hunt the woolly mammoths and such. Next, our final epoch, and the last in the Quaternary period that we're currently in, is called the Holocene. And during this time period, basically, humans are the dominant animals on the planet. And you have the Great Lakes due to glaciation during the Ice Age. That is the geologic timescale in a super condensed version. There's a whole lot more to it. It all gets a whole lot more complicated, but hopefully this gives you kind of a reference point for when I mention some of those forgotten animals. I hope you enjoyed learning all about the geologic timescale here on Wandering Wild today on Forgotten Friday. As always, my sources are found in the description box below, and if you liked what you saw, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any more videos. And don't forget, stay wild and never stop wondering.